Level 214 hero. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah. What kind of stuff are you occupying yourself with? What are you finding enjoyment in this game?
So, I mean, I've been playing this game for like since 2000, like I think 9, 10.
Mm-hmm.
So nowadays, I just get on to either play the new characters or like when Terror Burning stuff is out. But I think recently I just took it more seriously with my hero being the first ever past 210 I made.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just doing dailies, weeklies, daily bosses, trying to grind my hero up.
Mm-hmm.
But then this Terror Burning, and after seeing the Buccaneer changes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about transferring mains over to my Buck. But then I still want to work on my hero.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want my hero to like
Be a side
move
character.
up. Yeah, like
Mhm.
move up while I'm working with my Buck. But then like as soon as my Buck overtakes my hero, then I'll start pumping more hours into the hero or the Buck.
Yeah, sending that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the plan, but
And the general
know
thing
how.
that you do on like a daily, weekly basis is just, do you have any specific goal in mind, or you're just, kind of just going from one jump to the next, whatever natural milestone pops up?
With hero, I want to be able to clear CRA at least.
Sure.
That's like one of the goals I put.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even try to go for a struggle normal lucid party.
Mm-hmm.
Or not lucid, sorry.
Lotus.
Lomian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lotus Demon, yeah.
Yeah, that's my goal for hero before I start working.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any goals specifically for the bosses in between, like HMAG, Akechi, CPAP?
Yeah, I want to be able to do all, like I think of like CVEL as like the cap, as to like be able to do like all the bosses that one should be able to do, like maybe like Cygnus, Horntail, Pink Bean, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You should, like, I don't know, to me it feels like you should be able to do that solo, like, but CVEL is like the next lock. That's what I think is like the next lock.
Do you have CVEL like ranked, like in your mind ranked above like Hard Magnus?
Oh yes, I think so.
So I would agree that like a while ago it probably was around the same because of the 300% PDR, right? Because they had more armor, CVEL, but CVEL's armor was taken down to 200% quite a bit ago, and I think because of that, it still like depends on some classes a little bit. If you have more knockdown resistance, then Vellum can still be a little bit more tricky than HMAG. But in general, I would say it's generally accepted that HMAG is like the next step after CVEL, and then you have probably Akechi. Akechi can also maybe be easier than HMAG. Kind of like depends on how well you're doing with everything. And then Chaos Papulatus right after that, and that'll be like the last boss before you get to Lotus and Damien. So I don't know where you kind of want to like draw the line on which bosses you think are reasonable to be able to do.
Now, like,
I mean, that might be hard to guess for you as well if you've never gotten there yet, right? Yeah.
I've never gotten there, so.
Mm-hmm.
So like I from watching videos, I always thought like CRA was like to unlock before going Lotus and stuff. So, but like now all this.
Yeah, it's like the new equip set, right? Yeah, so it's like you definitely want to clear it enough, get the pieces, right? Upgrade the CRA pieces, and then use the damage from those pieces to apply it to Lotus and Damien. But they've added more bosses in between that kind of help you with smaller milestones so you can work your way up. So you can kind of use that as a stepping stone. Not like saying that you have to decide now which one you want to do, but that you can use them as a stepping stone to get closer and closer to be able to do Lotus and Damien parties and feel like you're more and more ready for that, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, then. Yeah, I would think.
Just anything up to Lotus and Damien, like struggle parties would be like the final, right?
Yeah, the final goal.
Yeah. Okay.
For my hero, yeah.
For this character. So that's probably going to be like, I don't know, like what, 220, 225 at the most?
Yeah.
And are you planning to... Sorry?
No, go on.
Are you planning to get a certain amount of like just arcane power, so you're strong enough to do that, and then kind of just stop doing dailies on this guy and then fully do them on the Buccaneer?
See, like, I don't really understand much about the arcane power.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of weird. I just been, whenever I get arcane symbols, I just pump it to my hero.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've just been doing. So I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay. So every region has right. So every region, if you kill monsters in that region, they can drop the symbols, but obviously that drop rate is so low that you don't really rely on that for any of the legitimate income. It's mostly from events and boxes and just the dailies that you can do in the area, right?
Yeah.
So there's twofold, right? You get arcane power, but you also get flat stat. So you can use it as a form of just getting stronger and getting more stat. But the other way is that you get arcane power for it, which means that if you want to push the character further, you're going to need enough arcane power to be able to meet the requirements of the monsters in the map. And as you get to higher level areas, the requirements of the maps is going to go up in arcane power, and if you don't meet that requirement, you're going to do less. You're going to get like a final damage penalty, and you're going to take more damage from the monsters. But if you can get more arcane power than the requirement of the map, you're going to deal bonus damage, and you're going to take less damage. And there's increments in 10%, 30%, and 50% of going over. So like 50% more than the requirement of the map is kind of like the max goal. Then you're maxing out on your damage, and you get hit for 1 damage to all the monsters hitting you. And that's like the ideal scenario. And some bosses later in the game are also arcane power bosses. So for those, the requirements will be pretty specific. If you don't hit that, your damage is just going to take a huge hit. You're going to go from either plus 50% when you're maxing out, which will be kind of what people aim for and what people rely on. If you're instead under and you're getting like 30% reduced damage, you're doing 70 instead of 150, you're doing less than half your damage than you're wanting to do, right? So that'll have a huge impact on how much efficiency your total funding that you're doing on the character will actually have in the outcome of the final damage. Does that kind of place it in a way that you can understand? You can say no.
Wait, I don't know what just happened on my side, but I think I left the call.
Oh, my bad.
And just joined back.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just very attentively listening.
No, I was, but then like the last 5, maybe 10 seconds just...
What's the last part you heard? About the bosses?
Yeah.
Yeah, so on the bosses, it's basically going to be implied that you meet the requirements to hit that 50% bonus final damage. And if you don't hit that, but instead, you maybe even have lower arcane power, it's going to make it so that all of the funding you put into your character is not going to be applied evenly as someone else. Like someone else could have the same gear as you, but we could be doing double your damage just because they did more dailies and have more arcane power.
Oh.
So that's why it's like part of the whole package deal. And doing your dailies, doing the symbol dailies is definitely one of the top most important ones, because not only is that arcane power going to have a huge impact on your final damage, but also on your flat stat and just, making you stronger overall. But, to say like, oh, you need to do like on all the areas on the hero and on the Buccaneer, like that's going to be a lot of dailies piled up together. So yeah. I could imagine that you get like to a certain level of funding on a hero where you can like barely do the bosses and you're like, okay, I can do them. And then you can choose for yourself, okay, maybe I'm going to fund it a little bit more, or maybe I'm just going to do dailies for a little bit more and just get like kind of like free stat in that way. And then mainly focus on the Buccaneer. And then maybe later down the road, once the Buccaneer gets so strong that basically the flames and the cubes that you get from the bossing can't really be used on a Buccaneer anymore, because they're either for lower tier or they're going to ruin your items if you use them. And then you can start trickling them down back into the hero and slowly bring your hero up without actively spending money on the hero.
Okay.
So that could be like a more of a long-term strategy where you basically just draw the line at, I can do it, and that's good enough, moving on to the buck kind of thing. And then, in the future, it'll come back. Plus, if you work more on your Legion and your Links, once you put those on the hero is going to get stronger as well than it is now. And then all of the content that you could already do, you'll just be able to do faster.
Okay.
Does it sound reasonable?
Yeah, it does.
Because you won't get to anything that requires arcane power when it comes to bossing, right? The lowest one there is Lucid, so that's like another big step ahead of, or like further than Lotus and Damien. So.
Okay. All right. Yep. I mean, that plan sounds a lot better than what I had. So.
Well, you could tell me what you did have. We can see how we can move from one to the other.
My plan was just to, cause like I don't really know what I'm doing mostly, so I was just gonna do all my dailies and weeklies on my hero, and then if I could get to my buck, if my buck is at 200, I would just also just do the dailies, because I don't think Arcane, the first symbol dailies are hard.
No.
It could be done like 5 minutes.
And it's kind of like training, right? So you're kind of like getting 2 for 1.
Like training. So I was just gonna do that, just keep trying to do everything on both characters, because I don't think it's a lot.
There's gonna be a time where you just, well, the levels progressively get harder to achieve on the symbols, and there's gonna be a point, probably once you hit like level 6 or 7 or something on the symbols, it's gonna be like, damn, it's like a lot of extra time to get just one level. It's dailies for like a month or something, or well, not maybe a whole month, but like it's dailies for like quite a few weeks just to get one extra level, just for 100 extra stat. And there's going to be way more valuable stuff that you want to do and grinding that you will want to do on the Buccaneer. And at that point, the opportunity cost of like, where do I allocate my time is going to feel like, okay, spending it on a hero now when I can already do the content that I want to do. At this point, I just want to, you know, it makes more sense to go harder on the Buck, get to do more bosses on the Buck, make more money, and get to the point on the Buccaneer where every upgrade on the Buccaneer gets so expensive that at that point it makes more sense again to spend a little bit on the hero, because of how much more mileage you can get out of the same amount of cash spending it on a character that's lower funded versus higher funded. Sound good?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay. So I guess, yeah, level-wise, there's not that much. Like the hero, so I would say the main reason to get levels on the hero would be to get more hyperstat points and to get more matrix slots, right? That's that accesses a whole lot of damage.
What's a matrix? Oh, yeah, it might be matrix.
Yeah, for your 5th job, yeah. Because there's a lot of skills that just even at level 1, being able to put them in the matrix and putting them on a skill is going to add so much damage to you that again in turn is going to reduce how much money you have to pump into the character to be able to output the same amount of damage. Because that's what it comes down to, right? There's a bunch of things that increases your damage. There's like your knowledge of the boss, there's the knowledge of the character, there's the, you know, the equips that your character has on, there's your V matrix, there's your arcane power, you know, there's all of these things together work. And we're going to try, for at least for this character, we're going to try to find the path of least resistance where we just push into the basics of all of these just enough so that we don't have to like hyper extend or get really, really expensive with anything, but that we can get a lot of value out of just the baseline stuff that we can have quick access to, basically. And then for the Buccaneer, we'll push it out way more, right? We'll get a little bit more min-maxy, and we'll set more long-term goals that are further down the line. So
like the V matrix, does it really actually like give you a lot of damage? Because I don't know what the V matrix is. I barely touched it.
I can see.
I don't know what I'm doing. I just did whatever I thought. Yeah. I just went with.
For sure.
I have no idea what this system is.
No, makes sense. It's a lot in the beginning. The first 4 jobs are very, very straightforward. Like you just get all the skills, you just max all the skills, you put them on a button, you move on. It's very, very simple and straightforward. V matrix is like levels of complexity, orders of magnitude above it. There's a little question mark, I think, in the bottom right where you can, or in the bottom left anyway, like when you talk to the NPC, where you answer some questions that gets some baseline stuff across. But I can give you like the quick rundown on basically what it does, and you know, if you need any clarifying questions, if you have any clarifying questions, let me know. I'll try to explain enough so that you can get the concept, not get like super in depth with everything. There might be some small things that we skip over, but if you're ever unsure about that, you can always ask in the chat to help get it clarified. But basically, the V-Matrix has 2 major values, and one is accessing new skills, so that's through skill nodes, through the blue ones, and it's empowering existing skills through boost nodes, so those are the black grayish outline ones that you see, right?
Yeah.
And you see on the bottom you have skill nodes, boost nodes, and then special nodes. Special nodes is very, very yeah, you very rarely use those. There's some niche situations where you use them, but in most cases you just immediately extract them because you get a lot of shards out of them, and then with the shards you'll be able to craft the nodes that you want later on. But you see the little clock that they have, they're temporary, so they expire in 7 days. So you mainly want to make sure that you extract them in time, otherwise they just disappear and you don't get those shards.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember it expiring on me.
Oh yeah, I have it still all the time. They're changing it in an upcoming patch where even they just become inactive, they don't disappear, so you can still extract them even when they become inactive, kind of as a safety net. I like that one because I forget to extract them all the time as well. But it's a shame, right? Because just one is 50 shards, and if you want to craft a boost node, that's 70. So that's almost a free node that you just lost. Yeah, so that's the three major things, right? So special nodes we could basically skip. Like there's some niche applications for it, but for this character that's not going to be in any way necessary to go into, and it's temporary, you have to craft, it's expensive. You tend to do this much later in the game, and this character is not going to get to that point. So the main things you will rely on... Oh, sorry, yeah, if you have a question, interrupt me.
No, I see, like I get it.
Okay. So... Yeah, so the blue ones, skill nodes, so that gives you access to a new skill that you didn't have before. And then the boost nodes gives you access to empowering the skills that you already had. So you see that every boost node can have, some skills on it. Some skills can also be a combination of multiple skills that get boosted. So it's good to read which boost node actually empowers which existing skill. So you'll recognize some skills as skills that you actively use, and you'll also recognize some first, second, and third job skills that you probably never use, right? So those are the ones that we don't want, but the ones that we are actively using, those are the ones that we do want. And this can help you increase your damage a whole lot. So typically, again, there's some exceptions, but typically the most of the skills that we want to boost are all the fourth job skills, because those are typically the strongest ones that we actually use, in mobbing and in bossing. And every one level of boosted will give you 2% final damage to that skill.
Oh.
So just 2% final damage on one level is not that crazy. If you can choose between a whole new skill, right, that enables a whole new way of training, even if it has cooldown or not, versus like a 1-2% damage boost on like 3 skills that you might use, even if it's like a perfect tri node with 3 skills in it that you all need, even then a level 1 boost node isn't that great. But all of the nodes can go up to a max of level 25 by fusing them together. So you already got some of them done, right? Like you got the Burning Soul Blade level 6 by fusing the same ones together. And when it comes to the boost nodes, because it would be too difficult to get like exactly the same boost node many times because there's too much variance, basically it looks only at the top skill. So when you look at the node, look at the picture, it's basically the skill that's visible on the left side, kind of like the bottom left side. That's like the main skill that determines what other boost nodes you might want to use to level that one up. So yeah,
that left one has to be the same with the other left one to be fused together. Yeah, so
if you try to, if you go to the node master right now, you would try to, you click that level 2 one, and it'd say like enhance, you won't get any options because you don't have any other ones. But if you would take that third one with the combo fury there on the left, then the other 3 that you have would all appear, because those have the same skill on that side. You see that?
Yeah.
And then the original boost node, that's the one that would get leveled up, and all of the skills on that boost node will get leveled, because that one gets experience regardless of what the second or the third boost node are on the ones that you use to level the main one up. So that top skill is important. And one of the things that helps in that is when you craft boost nodes, you get to select the top one, and then the second and the third one are random, which some people use as lottery to try to find a boost node with the 3 skills that they want to boost. But most of the time you use that just to craft any node, just to level up the one that you already have that has the 3 skills that you want, just to feed that to get it leveled up to 225, to level 25.
Okay.
So you get 2% final damage per level, and you can get up to 25, so that's 50%, right? But then the slots can level up as well, right? With the matrix points, you see you've already leveled up some slots.
Yeah. Oh,
You spread out the levels a little bit now. It's not, it's not terribly bad or anything, but usually you just want to level up one slot at a time and then move on to the next one, because you'll generally have a pretty distinct priority of which skills you want to level. Which nodes you want to level. So whenever you do have a node you want to level, you want to put it in the highest level possible. So the node itself can be up to 25, and then the slot can go up to level 5, right? Like you noticed with the Burning Soul Blade, that one's level 5, I believe. And then that basically turns the Burning Soul Blade into level 11, right? You see that on the left side there in the V matrix. Yeah. So then the +5, that's what comes from the slot. So if you put a level 25 max in there, it can go up to 30, and 30 is like the absolute max for skill nodes, but the boost nodes can go to a total of 60. So yeah, and it's 2% per level, so that can go up to 120% final damage for the individual skills that are on at least 2 boost nodes, right? Because you have to, if you want to get to 60, you need both in level 5 slots, and you need 2 individual level 25 boost nodes. So basically that's what we call tri-nodes. So tri-nodes is when you have a boost node and it has the 3 skills on it that you want to boost. Sometimes you can get very picky and you want 3 specific skills on there. Let's say, you can probably imagine some skills you only use when you're mobbing and some maybe only when you're bossing, right? Yeah. And some people will have to boost 6 skills, maybe 6 that they want to use when mobbing, 3 when mobbing, 3 when bossing, but they want to have every skill be on 2 different nodes. So they'll try to get a combination of 4 different nodes where 2 of them have the 3 attacking ones in different order, because the top skill has to be different for every boost node that you equip. You couldn't equip 2 Combo Fury nodes or 2 of the other ones. It has to be a different top skill, right? Just in the same way that you can equip 2 skill nodes, you can also not equip 2 boost nodes that are basically the same boost node by having that name. So once you have that combination of those tri-nodes, if there's a distinction between mobbing and bossing, that's perfect, because then you're mobbing, you can just equip the 2 mobbing boost nodes, and then you can switch them out for the 2 bossing, because that leaves an optimal amount of slots available to put skill nodes in, so you can always use those, because especially in the beginning, skill nodes is access to a huge amount of damage versus just the low level boost nodes instead. So it's all about mix and matching, looking at what you get access to, looking at which nodes you get to level, and putting the right skills in for the right situation, whether you're mobbing, you're bossing, and then even the further you go, even though you get access to more, you also want to min-max more. So it's basically like you get to pick and choose your skill set before you go into content.
Oh, yeah.
So depending on how high your standards are, you can pretty much say like, fuck boost nodes, I'm not going to bother with that, I'm just going to rely on the skill nodes. But if you're going to be maining the character and you're going to play for longer, you will very heavily start relying on your boost nodes for mobbing in the beginning, because all of the skill nodes essentially have long cooldowns, right? And if you don't keep your boost nodes up and you keep leveling them, your basic damage when the skill nodes are on cooldown is going to go down so low that you won't be able to kill quickly in the map. But it's a combination of the boost nodes and a combination of the arcane power that are going to be very important the further you go into the arcane river to keep killing at a decent pace, because the final damage, right, on the boost nodes and the final damage increase from having more arcane power than the map requires. And these final damage boosts are basically carrying your damage. Because if we didn't have those, you would have to keep upgrading all of your equips, and like the Star Force and the Flames and the potential, right, to get super, super strong to be able to kill monsters quickly. But because of these systems, you can basically just make sure that you have good, solid potentials on your weapon, your secondary weapon, and your emblem. And, boost nodes, symbols, dailies, all of that stuff. And if you get that covered and you stick with that, you basically don't really have to rely on too much damage from all your other pieces. As long as you work a little bit on your Legion, whenever you level, you could put another skill in, you can level up your hyper stats, you get all that for free when you're leveling, and you mainly rely on damage from those pieces. Then you can use your accessories and your other equips for other things. But that goes into other stuff. But I guess sticking with everything we just said about the Matrix, does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it does. So like for my hero right now, I would want to focus on my skill nodes, because I'm not really taking my hero up.
Yeah,
But
you
for my
don't have that many
Buccaneer,
boost nodes, so it's going to be
yeah,
hard to have enough of them to level up the boost nodes to a point where they overtake the amount of utility you would get out of a skill node. That's not to say there's some of your nodes, some of the skill nodes that you have equipped right now that are not super useful. So still switching those out for a boost node will still make you get, give you a net gain on doing more damage. For example, the hyper body one, that's just basically once you have enough arcane power, and all of the bosses in the mid and late stages of the game, they all do percentage HP attacks. So increasing your HP just makes the damage also go up. Yeah, so it doesn't really help you. There's like a few characters that scale off of HP, and it's really good for them. But for everyone else, it's basically useless. Same thing with rope lift. Like rope lift is very useful in some boss fights and in some areas when you're training. But you do have an up jump in your kit now. And most boss fights don't have platforms that you can even latch onto. So in most situations, rope lift is not super useful either. So those would be definitely 2 slots that you could consider switching out of. And in your situation as a hero, you get a lot of damage from decent combat orders because you have a 4th job skill that gives you final damage per orb. And final damage is great, right? We talked about final damage already enough. We're going to keep emphasizing that. And the decent combat orders makes that skill go up a level where it increases the final damage per orb. And because you have so many, since final damage is multiplicative, it actually increases your flat damage at all times by a lot. So for a hero, that's actually a high priority.
I remember one of my friends who plays this game. He's like, I don't know, like 270. He's pretty good. But he told me like heroes' final damage is basically nothing. Like it won't like help in your damage, because like when I look at damage, I look at range. My range.
Yeah, that's something you need to get out of, right? Because like what we talked about, the final damage of the nodes and the arcane power, those are like the things that carry your damage. Those don't show up in your stat window at all.
Oh.
Because
so range doesn't matter.
Essentially, yeah. Essentially, range doesn't matter. Because like a hero, if you're not buffed, you could look like you have 1 or 2 mil range. And when you're completely buffed, even your visual damage range when you're bossing, I think my hero, like unbuffed, I think is like 16 mil range or something. But when I'm bossing, I can be at 90 in some situations. Oh. And then plus, depending on the final damage penalties, if I don't have the arcane power, I could be hitting zeros. If I don't have the boost nodes, I could be having 100, I could be doing base damage when someone else could be doing 220% of the final damage because of the boost nodes. And then IED is another thing, right? Like going against the armor, the PDR of the boss, what I talked about briefly with Vellum. If you don't have enough IED, not enough penetration to break through the armor of the boss, you could also be hitting ones with exactly the same range as someone else. So range used to be like the be-all, end-all kind of indicator, but now you can't look at that at all anymore. Because someone with exactly the same range could be doing 0 damage, or they could be having the same range as you and do way more. And that's even within the same class. So if you look at a different class, it could even be more wildly different.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense now, because like I always wondered, how does this person have so much low range than me but can clear everything like way faster, better than me?
Exactly. So that's why I have this, and I'll link it to you. Because I have a video on that's under the ! range command. It's basically like, why is range a horrible number to look at, and what do you do instead, basically? Because it's easy to say like, oh, range isn't good anymore, but then what is good, right? Like, what do you look at? So I have this instead, where basically, and we already went through some of these. It looks like a lot of numbers at first sight, right? A lot of stuff going on. And I'll basically help this make sense, because this is essentially what all my progression sessions are like, to kind of see what kind of stuff do you find fun, what are you trying to do, where do you kind of fall into the metrics now, and what is a reasonable way, taking into account what you enjoy doing, where you can improve the most so that we can get the biggest value out of the time that we spend, right? So if you look at your character now, the lower your level, the bigger the discrepancies will be, right? Someone want to have like a huge legion already, someone will have nothing, and that, someone in the beginning can just get carried by a really strong legion. And then someone else who doesn't have that might have to usually overcompensate by getting way more. If you make a lot of money on another character or something, you can just get really good potentials. Or if you don't have that, you can invest every single day doing the symbol dailies, making sure that you participate in events, maybe buy nodes there and work on your nodes and your symbols instead, and that can overcompensate. Ideally, there's like a healthy balance between all of these. But if something you absolutely hate, you can cut it out to make sure that you maintain the general level of fun and play the game, and then you have to just overcompensate a little bit with the other steps. So as this stands, your hero is kind of like in the early of the mid game, right? Early stages of the mid game. Yeah. And then so your main stat, according to the page at least, you probably want to have it like around 8.5K stat or something. Don't know where you're at right now. You're at 7.6, yeah. So you're within the boundaries, right? Like early on. So that's not totally out of there. Good. Or it means that at least my my measurements are completely off. That's also good feedback. Let's see. Yeah, because because you're so new, this is going to be like a lot of information on a lot of different aspects. But that might also mean that I can't go super in depth with all of these things individually. And it might not be both short-term, midterm, and long-term advice for all of these. So I might have to point to a bunch of the commands that I have with information, so that once you get to the point where the information from this session kind of like stops and kind of stops being useful, that you can go to the command and double check in the video to kind of see what the follow-up step is for after that.
Okay.
Because if we had to go into all of the things like the whole way through for all of it, this is going to be like a 5-hour session, right? Because this game is so old and it's got so many systems built up together that to me all makes sense, but we're going to have to make them all make sense together. But basically it just all comes back down to the game stages grid. So like stat-wise over there, crit rate and IED are going to be stats that are super, super important. You'll notice that final damage isn't on here because final damage is like a combination of all of these things, right? Which VMatrix is broken down to boost node and skill node levels, which now you already know what that means, right?
Yeah.
It's broken down into Arcane Power, which will have as an effect a certain final damage multiplier, which basically takes into account, are you doing your dailies or are you skipping those? And this is a hard one. Like if you don't do these, you're going to have to do a lot of the other stuff to make it up. Not so much in the beginning, but once you get into the late game and you're not really doing your symbol dailies, it's going to be rough to keep up with other stuff, because final damage means it multiplies everything, right? Like if your damage is a certain amount, but you don't have the arcane power and you lose 30% final damage, you lose 30% of everything you worked for. And if you have plus 50%, you gain 50% of everything you worked for. So in situation 1, you go down to doing 70% of your damage. In situation 2, you go up to 150%. So you're doubling your damage by working more on the arcane power, right? Same thing goes for boost nodes for the specific skills. And same thing goes for IED, which we'll get into in a little bit when it comes to on bosses penetrating enough of the boss armor so your damage gets to go through and deal damage to the bosses. Yeah, so that's why all of these numbers are on here, and that's why they're all important, right? So we've got so critical rate and IED are essentially stats that are very much supported by your hyperstats that you've already thrown some points into. I'm going to get into that a little bit to explain that a little bit more, so you can make sure that you feel more in control of that, right? And then it's basically hyperstat combined working with your link skills. You took a picture of that as well. And your Legion board. As you can see now, you don't really have access to those stats in the Legion board yet, right? But the outside of the Legion board, you see the stats there. You see critical rate, boss damage, IED, and critical damage, it's hard to read. Ignore enemy defense and boss damage. Once you get to the bigger parts of the grid and you get to put the pieces there, the combination of the member bonus, so which characters you put on the board, where you put the characters, so the grid bonus, and the link skills that those characters provide at the higher levels that you select actively on a character, those are mainly going to be in place to help you gain those stats. So that's critical rate. all three of those systems are going to work together, and we're going to have to kind of like puzzle them together to make sure that you get high crit rate, as high critical damage as possible after high crit rate, right? Because if you don't hit a crit, the critical damage doesn't apply. So you want to build on critical rate before critical damage, because otherwise you lose efficiency on the critical damage. If it can apply all the time, it's not being fully applied. So it's kind of a waste to invest in that. The IED to make sure that we can break through the armor of the bosses. And then damage percent and boss damage percent is on a lower priority than the other ones because of how calculations work, because they're not final damage in the way they are, but they kind of get additively put together, the damage and the boss damage. Basically, when you're bossing, they get thrown together onto one pile. So the higher that goes, the more you get like diminishing returns because it's additive there. It's not multiplicative like final damage. So we prioritize final damage sources, and then additive sources go after that.
Okay.
It's a lot, right? So tell me if you need to stop or if I need to re-explain something, because it's a lot of information, I know.
I think I get, the gist of it. It's like, try to work on my Legion, my Link skills. Arcane power and boostness are like a big factor in my damage. That's why, even though I see my hero at 210 or 214, I see someone at like 206. It's just more. It makes sense now. It's all these added factors.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And a lot of that is probably they have good legions already, right? And they have the member bonus, the grid bonus, and the link skills just added to that character. And maybe they even have weaker gear than you, but they'll just add up doing more. Or maybe they have like 200 nodes from another character they just throw in that character and immediately level up their boost nodes to like level 15. Now they're doing 30% more final damage than you on their regular attack. It's really, you can overcome a whole lot of early game strife once you have another stronger character that you can just throw resources down with. 100%.
So, okay, and then another question was like about the Legion system. I understand the Legion system. Like I know what it is, but then I don't know like in depth like what do I need to focus? How do I put my blocks around? Stuff like that. And then what characters should I level to like for like more damage? Like what should be 140 and stuff.
Yeah, we kind of organically get to that. So I sent you a link. This is a link I have. It's under !links because it has the link skills. But it doesn't only have the link skills, it also has the Legion member bonuses for the grid. So this basically takes care of 2 out of those 3 that I just mentioned to getting sure that those peripheral stats get done. So basically what I did here is I took all of the stats that you get. So the white squares are the... rectangles are the link skills, and then the green ones are the Legion buff. But because both of them are value that a character gives to your account, right, at the same time, I put them on the same grid because I think you have to take both into account to determine what is the best value for your account. So basically, in kind of ordering the stats from just being super important, right, to give you early game damage and progress and help you speed up. Because essentially what your Legion is you're trying to build a giant snowball, right? And you're trying to throw it, trying to push it down the hill. And then once your Legion grows, you want to have constantly accelerating effects on making every next character optimally increased and better at what they can do, right? So there's a few different strategies on how to build out the Legion. There's like the more organic way and the more like fun, careless, or carefree, I guess I should say, happy-go-lucky casual way. And then there's like the more hardcore min-max, like I just want to get this done kind of way. I don't know where you kind of see yourself in the middle or just...
I do have the feeling of like I just want to get my Legion done, but then I'm more towards like the casual, super fun.
Casual in the sense of not putting too many hours in, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I put a lot of hours in, but I still consider myself casual in the sense that my main goal is having fun. I like learning about the game. I like just slowly progressing. But I do that for a lot of hours, so I do end up progressing still pretty quickly. But not nearly as quickly as anyone who puts the same hours as me in, but is pretty min-maxy, has like 3 characters at the furthest point that I have my main,
Oh.
But so there's different gradations of what like tryhard is or what casual is, in my opinion. For
for me, a casual player, I would say I play maybe like 2-3 hours a day, and then I play maybe. I try to play every day, but there are times where I miss a day.
Sure. Yeah.
So
it's inevitable.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
then
it gets punished hard, but it's inevitable.
yeah, and I do take like maybe a month or two break in between every time I play.
Yeah, because you're
But then
mainly
I play
playing
for,
during the seasonal events, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then like now I kind of want to try to play as long as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I try to get as far as I can before I inevitably stop and get back onto this game.
Sure. So, yeah. So the grid essentially just, the first column is basically the order in which I would just always advise, like, from my account, what would be the best one to make now to progress my account. It's basically just check the first column. The general level of progress, to like how far do you get them. If it's a Terra burn, you want to get them to 210. If it's a mega burn, getting them 150, just get it to the level that it can go up to. If it's not, determined by where you are in the game. But I think it's always a good idea to just get them to level 100. You can definitely park them there, and then I just usually log in and get the fourth job, kill Zakum, make sure you kill the arms. That's a lot of experience, and then just log out of the character again, move on to the next character. As long as you have a few characters that you make like one new character, get to level 70 or something, do a few Zakums on a few other characters, and then just play on your main. And then next day, maybe you get it from 70 to 100, maybe start up a new character, get to 60, whatever. Do a few more Zakums. As long as you do a little bit of Legion every day, you'll see a lot of progress. In like a month, you'll see yourself go from like 1.6k, I think you were now, or 1.4, 1.5. You'll see you go from 1.5 to like 2.5 or to 3. In the beginning, it's all about just throwing bodies at the problem kind of thing, because so it's like the top 40 characters, their levels count, right?
Oh, okay.
So so in the beginning, it's just about having 40 characters at all on your account and having them all at least level 60. 40 characters at level 60 is already 2,400 Legion.
Oh.
And then, so you get them to level 70, that'll basically be 3k with the few higher characters that you already have. Plus, you get access to 40 level 1 link skills. So that's part of the snowball, right? And then when you reach 3k, that's when you get your first grid expansion. Now you get to go into crit rate, into critical damage. That's the second part of the snowball, right? You'll start divesting from the middle of the grid, and you'll start pushing your pieces towards the outside. In the beginning, it doesn't really matter where you put the pieces, right?
Okay.
The one thing I will say though, do you know about switching the stats in the middle?
No.
So there's little arrows you see next to the stat. If you click that, you'll get a drop-down menu where you can select which stat you want there, and you can move them around very easily like that.
Oh.
So in the beginning, you typically just build like one square, right? Just two touching triangles, just build one square. And then you just have main stat and then weapon or magic attack in the other one. And then if you go to a different character, you can just switch the stat around and boom, you're done. You don't have to move the pieces. You don't have to like go into weird shapes and whatever, right? That'll make it more straightforward in the beginning. And then once you get access to the outer grid, so once you hit 3k or higher, then you'll basically move into crit rate and critical damage. Those are the important stats. So you'll use, I think it's archer and mage pieces just to make a straight line down the middle to reach the outer sides of critical rate and critical damage, and you start building out those as fast as possible. Another piece of the snowball, by the way, is once you reach 3k, instead of putting one extra character on the board, you'll get to put 5 extra characters on the board. So that's going to increase your coverage by quite a bit. And the next time that happens is when you go from 5k to 5.5k, you get to put 5 on the board instead of 1 as well. And then eventually once you go from 7.5 to 8k, which is, pretty far down the line, but that's when you get to put another 5 on the board. That's why 8k is kind of like the end game goal for a lot of people, because that is definitely still worth it to go that far, but beyond 8k is like beyond hopeless in terms of value for time invested. You have to really love playing a lot of characters to get to that point. But so, the full board, 40 level 70s, that synchronizes with the 3k, that synchronizes with that spike, that synchronizes with the board going up, with having all the link skills, and with being able to go back to the characters, selecting all those things to the characters, and getting them from 70 to 100 very easy. All of them 100 gets you to 4k, gets you to the next spike, another big grid, and that gets you to doing daily Zakum on all of them. Once they get all to 120, you get the level 2 Link, another spike. Once you get them all to 140, that's a good goal to be able to get characters to with Daily Zakumo, I think. Past that, it's very slow. But you have the whole board 140 and a few characters. That gets you to 6k Legion. That gets you to the full board available. At 6k, you have the full grid available, and then you can go fully into critical rate and critical damage if you want to push them from 140 to 200. Typically, that's something you do further, but that will mean that any character that you play, you'll be able to, and then we go back to the progression grid for a second, you'll be able to always fill that need to get to 100% crit rate, because a lot of classes in the beginning, they just don't have 100%, right? They need skills later, or they can't reach 100% by themselves. They need the help. But being able to fill up the critical rate in the hyperstats, in the link skills, and that's why in the order of the links, the crit rate is very high. It's the second one here, right? It's experience first, and then critical rate right there. And then right after critical rate, critical damage, right? That's why they're set up that way. Because once you have these first characters, once you have these done, every single character you log into is already going to be so much stronger, because you can go into damage like crazy here, and damage is after that, but if you don't hit crits, your damage is just bad. And you can't really know this until you have 100% crit rate on a character and you forget to put in your links and you realize how slow everything dies, because it's not just not crits, now all of your critical damage is not applying. Now in your case of the hero, you know, you're kind of like a non-buffed stage, you only have 4% critical damage, so you don't miss out on a lot. But the further you go into the game, there can be situations where you're like anywhere from 100 to 180% critical damage, and then not hitting crits is a huge deficit to your overall damage. So these two are like the backbone, right? Getting the experience links and Legion buffs up, and getting the critical rate up. Once you have this, that's a very, very solid foundation for your Legion. So you just do them in that order. But you know, if you're trying to do it like business, purely business wise, it's all about like the magnitude of the amount of characters in the beginning. If you get them to 70, you get all those level 1 links, you get the Legion grid available, and then you have all of the pieces to play around with. Which members you put on the board will not be very important in the beginning. It'll just be your highest level characters that you put on there, right? Because they cover the most ground, so you get the most grid bonuses out of them. As you go further, I think once you like pass, it's basically once you pass 6k, I think, and you like, I think you get a lot of value at that point out of building a mage and a non-mage board, right? Because you have two presets that you can select between. Because there's a lot of characters that the member bonus is flat intellect, and you know, that just is absolutely nothing for you if you're one of the other characters, but if you're a mage, it does a lot. And then the member bonus, the total addition of all of the member bonus will start coming into play once you go past 6k. But until then, you can just have one board. Typically, people will still have two presets, one that's specifically for leveling mules or for training for yourself. Typically, that overlaps. And then one for when you're bossing. So the priority will go away from just critical rate and critical damage, and basically that's it. You probably won't need to fill critical rate all the way, but you'll want to fill the critical damage all the way, just enough critical rate to get to 100%, right? Together with the hyperstats and stuff, you know, trying to find a good balance there. And then if you're training, you could also go into bonus experience up here. I would say like maybe start doing that when you hit 6k or something. Before that, I wouldn't go into it because it's terribly inefficient. You need 4 squares filled for 1%. It's just not very good. It's very high cost. Like filling, I always give this comparison and people immediately get it. If you fill the whole 40 squares of bonus experience, that gives you 10% EXP, which is the same as just putting the block of a level 200 0 on the board. That also gives you 10% EXP. So it makes more sense to just level your 0 to 200 and put that block in than to sacrifice like 40% crit rate for the same amount of bonus, right? Yeah, but once you're 6k and you have enough crit rate from the other stuff, then you can do both, and now you could double dip. And then maybe you have enough hyperstat points that you don't need to put everything into critical rate there. And if you're mobbing, you don't need to go into boss damage and IED, and maybe you can also go into bonus experience on your hyperstats, and that's how you create more value for your later leveling characters, by having a solid foundation of the Legion. Because basically, this is our way of funding characters, because we don't have trade, right? We we can make equips, but you can't transfer them to other characters. So how can you level up and strengthen all of your characters at the same time? By investing into your Legion and your links. That's how you have a solid foundation that they can all rely on.
Let's see. Yeah, I always knew Legion was important, but I don't know, it was this big of a difference.
Yeah, I could show you my Legion showed the difference, but it's... Yeah, I mean, mine is like pretty extreme. It's of course pretty out there, right? But so you can see that my grid bonus is 5 strength, 75 dex. Because of the main stat, it's 5 attack, 250 HP. That's just what I get from the middle. And then it's 20% critical damage, 18% critical rate, 40% boss, and 40% IED on this setup. And then all of these member bonuses. And then on top of that, all of the critical rate. Sorry, not all of the link skills, right? That I can choose from. And then you can choose 12 out of these as well. So if you add all of that up together, it's like insane how much value you get on a new character that otherwise has nothing. So to give you a reference, I made my Terra Burning hero, and when I was on Maple Island, I had my Legion set to the character, but I don't think you can even set link skills already at that level. I'm not sure. But with like my basic attacks at level 6, I hit almost a 12k crit.
Oh.
Which is like, you know, in the old school, that's like level 60 damage or something, or like level 70 damage or something when you're actually playing. Yeah, I think when I was because I did Lara as well with another streamer with Amy, and I had the Legion, and she basically only played on non-reboot, so she had nothing on reboot. And I think at a certain point I was doing around 300 times her damage, just because of, you know, because in the beginning you have nothing, right? So the Legion is a huge amount, and then as you grow, it doesn't represent as big of a percentage of your damage. But in the early game, it's a huge amount, because what it amounts to is I don't have to invest any money. I get to save all the money. I get to take all the money this character makes and take it away and put it into a fund, so that when I want to commit to a character, I have more money to rely on. It's investing into your future.
Yeah, so I gotta start working on my Legion, but
yeah, it's one of those things that if you just do a little bit a day and you have a general good plan, it's solid progress, you know?
Yeah.
Balancing time between the two, yeah.
And then another question I had was, what is, like, I get sorry, I have a list of questions I wanted to ask you. So the next one I have was equipment guide. And how would I mean, like, I understand how to like progress with equipment. I think it's just, you know, doing my Garden daily, try to get, or my Legion to get epic pot scrolls to pot up my stuff. But then I don't understand how. Oh, actually, no. This actually fizzles my equipment question, because I was just wondering how some people have Pencilier gear and does way more damage than me when I have CRA gear. But then now that I know about Legion, B Matrix, all that stuff, it makes sense.
Yeah, and also just because they have Pencilier, that doesn't technically mean that it can't be upgraded better than yours. It probably won't be, because of the longevity of Pencilier isn't great, so you typically don't want to invest too much into it. Whereas CRA has great longevity, so you tend to invest more into it. But yeah, like a new account, a Terrorburn new character with CRA will get hopelessly outdamaged by someone with a strong Legion, and who maybe threw a few nodes onto a character who is just like pretty much naked and only wears a weapon. That person can easily outdamage you, yeah, because their peripheral stats are good. The IED, the critical rate, critical damage. If those numbers are like on point and they know where to put all of their points, like strategically with the hyperstat, with the grid and all of that, if they put those points in the right place, they can easily outdamage you, yeah. And that's not to say that those equips aren't great, right? CRA gear is amazing. But if you don't have the stuff around to elevate it to the next level, right? It all comes back to the balance of all the stuff like in the progression window, yeah. And
another thing about meso farming, I know that Kanna isn't needed anymore since they're getting rid of the Kishin thing. So
yeah,
like,
it's 6 more months, so that's still quite a
Oh,
while
yeah,
to make advantage of. By the way, for the because you did mention equip progression, right? I don't really have a specific guide for that, but I do have a dailies guide that kind of it takes into account if your numbers are like roughly where they are here in the progression grid, then instead of using the damage range to say how strong you are, you can use your level to say how strong you are. Because there's also another final damage penalty that's based on how many levels lower you are than the thing you're attacking. So your level is also an important metric in final damage itself. So if you abide by these numbers, you know the numbers and you know the level of the things you're attacking, you can use your level as an indicator of how strong you are. And then you can use this grid here where the first page shows which kind of content. I guess I can hide this column, I think, because you can just talk to the NPC now. You can... Where are these little things gone? Hang on, I need to edit this because we can't be having this. This needs to be clean. There we go. You can see what kind of stuff drops where. It's not super in-depth, but it does take you through all of the... Because I didn't want to have every single thing that drops in this grid because it would get too complicated. I'm thinking of redoing this in some way that make it a little bit more user-friendly without taking people too much by the hand, right? I don't want to tell everyone, like, here's this, there's that, you need to do this, you need to do that. Because then at a certain point, people are just doing a playthrough. I mean, you're just, like, following a step 1 to 100 playthrough, and then you're, like, at the finish line and you're done. But I want to help people have an experience that is memorable and that's fun for them, and not, just how do I get to the finish line the soonest. That's not like the experience I'm trying to give. So I'm trying to find a sweet spot kind of in between where it's a little bit more, gives a little bit more info, but it also doesn't take too much initiative away from the people playing the game. But the second page, that one goes into the... there's like weird lines that appear somewhere sometime because of Google Docs. Nice. And basically, if your level is your indicator of how strong you are, right? If you answer to the numbers in the progression grid, then you can use your level here to kind of see which dailies and which weeklies are highlighted in blue that I think are worth your time to consider trying. And some of these, if you're just new to the game, might be way too hard for you. And some of these might be pretty easy for you. It'll depend on, again, what I said in the beginning, right? Your familiarity with the boss and your familiarity with your character. And then all the other factors, right? Whether you answer to the level. So it'll say here if it's daily or weekly. It'll have a link to the wiki page as well, so you can get information on the PDR of the boss, right? The armor, to see how much IED you need, to see how much penetration you need. You can have things like the drop tables, so you can see what kind of items they drop. And sometimes there's some additional information here. Some dailies you might want to re-roll because they're annoying, so you want to make sure that you don't pick a daily that just takes forever to complete, for example. And then for the harder bosses down here, there's some boss guides as well that can get you started on the mechanics of the boss, so you don't go in completely blind and you have a bit of an idea what's going on.
Yeah. So yeah, this was kind of what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
General guide of what boss drops what gear, because I didn't really know much.
Yeah, if you follow this, like, you don't do everything, right? Sometimes some of these things you're going to do like 2 times and be like, okay, this is, this is fine. And then on another character, you can be like, I know where to find it, or you can be like, I can just skip this. This is not something in my progression that I need to. Because sometimes there's things that I call sideways progression, where you can kind of get something and it technically makes you stronger, but it doesn't make you so much stronger that it's worth pushing the money into it. It's better to just save that money and go for the next step first. And on your first playthrough, you'll make some of those mistakes, but I wouldn't even call them mistakes. They're just learning experience. As long as you kind of follow this, you don't make any huge mistakes, and you're not going to miss out on anything super important. It's all in here. Mm-hmm. And then, you can fine-tune it for yourself based on how much you enjoy the content and how quickly you can grow in the next character. You can just, hop and skip and jump over some steps.
Yeah. And then another thing was, what is it? I don't know. A friend told me that I kind of want drop gear. I don't. Is that important as to like, should I try to make what my gear is right now?
Yeah, because you talked about
Roar
Kanna,
for
right?
drop.
And then drop
Yeah.
gear, it all comes down to like making money for your account and speeding that up, right? Yeah, so the whole Kanna thing, I will still say, usually, you know, whether you want to choose to go for Kanna or not, just to lay that down, if you play very irregularly, like you can't do very long sessions, or you play so much that you play more than the amount of totems you can buy. I don't know if you know about totems to increase the spawn.
It's the Maple reward point thing, right?
Yeah, Maple reward points for the wild totems. Yeah, because that's in a session of 2 hours, right? So if you play even more than that, you run out of those very quickly. And you want to play more, you want to gain more money, or you can't do those long sessions. So you want to do 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Then Kanna, I think, is very good value for you. If you don't tend to do that, then I think going in a Kanna is always kind of like a sidetrack that's kind of bait. Unless you're planning to main a Kanna, of course, then, you know, go for it. And it's a very solid character, of course, so I'm not gonna like dissuade people from maining it or anything. But if you don't do that, essentially you end up going for drop gear on your main. Yeah. Drop gear is essentially kind of like the catch-all for like a combination set of meso obtain and item drop rate on your equipments, which are lines of potential you can get on accessories once they reach legendary. So this hinges on to what I said before, where you want to rely on your damage. Do you remember what you rely on your damage for?
My damage would be like my Legion stuff, might be Matrix, my Link skills, my nodes, my Arcane force, all that.
And there was one more. There was one more that I added. The potentials of which items? Do you remember? I think you have them up top here.
Items?
Yeah. There's 3 items that are very important that will basically, together with those things you just mentioned, they will carry your damage in the beginning, so you don't have to rely on the damage of the other pieces. And that gives you the freedom to go for the drop rate gear, to go for the utility of making more money without sacrificing kill speed, right? Ideally, you want to be able to kill as fast as you can kill with any equip that you have on. So if you don't need the damage from the equips, but you can get extra drop rate and extra meso obtain and make more money in the same time at the same speed, that's a net increase. So that's good value for your time, right? And the 3 pieces that will still be pretty important to give you damage is your weapon, your secondary weapon, and your emblem. And the main reason is because they can get percentage attack or percentage magic attack if you're a mage stats, which will increase your damage way more comparatively than percentage stat will, because of how many sources we have that can give you those stats. You know, just because of how the multiplication of damage works, those stats are highly, highly desired. So as long as these 3 items have the potential lines that you're looking for, have the percentage attack, typically, you know, up to legendary, you already have that, and 2 useful lines. Then for all the other pieces, you can rely. So probably for the hero, we're not going to need to go for the drop in meso gear, right? Because I would say it's pretty much worth it, but you want to at least, you know, you want to at least level your character to like to 250, I think, to earn it back and then some, to make it worth the whole investment. So if your character is only going to go up to 225 or something, and you're mainly going to keep it to do like bosses on the side, it's not worth going for drop gear there at all. Because you get the meso, you get the meso and drop gear first to make more money while you're training, right? And then specifically also you get the drop gear for when you're bossing, so you can get more equipment drops that you would need for backups when you're upgrading your items to high star force, because very high star force they can start blowing up. So you want to build backups, and that's going to take a lot of time, but you only get so far where you can need the backups once you're going for higher star force, when you're pushing at high level, and that upgrade that's pretty prohibitive and pretty expensive starts making sense to being the next upgrade. So until you get to that point, or if you're not even planning to get to that point, that makes it that you don't have to get the drops, that makes it that you don't have to get the drop gear, which means you can reallocate those resources to the Buccaneer instead.
Okay.
Because the return on investment is not going to be there, essentially, right?
Yeah. So and then the next question is, I don't know what Tower of Oz or Dojo is.
Okay, so Tower of Oz and Dojo are they're kind of similar in the way that there basically are a bunch of floors, and you have to clear one to get to the next one. In that way, they're very similar. Tower of Oz is a bunch of different types of puzzles. There's one big boss at every 10 floors that has a unique kind of mechanic that you just have to know, and has some puzzles with some RNG on the way up there. Basically, the main purpose of Tower of Oz, like the purpose of both can be that it's fun for you and that you like to like limit, test, and improve. Tower of Oz, the main thing is that you get jewel boxes, ring boxes, with a chance to have rings in them that can be insanely good. This is typically something that people start worrying more about once you're like past level 255 or something, and you're trying to really get those really valuable rings. Until that point, typically people don't really touch on that subject at all. There's like huge guides that take you through all the floors that break the whole thing down if you really want to get into it. And there's also like some more stuff coming on the way from KMS that's going to increase the rates further down the line to get those really good rings as well. So that's something that you have a lot of time to like work your way up to. Dojo is a more readily, like earlier available content. Basically, there's two main purposes for Dojo. One is just to practice bossing, what to do in a bossing situation in a limited environment, right? You just have like a very small dojo map, and they put a boss into the map, and you try to kill it as fast as possible. And when you kill it, you go to the next boss, and one of the bosses is progressively faster. With every 10th boss, kind of similar to with Oz, every 10th boss being significantly stronger than the previous boss, and not necessarily weaker than the one that comes right after it. The one that comes after it might be weaker than the one before, but then it slowly works up to the next, multiple of 10, and then that one is then significantly stronger again. So you can use that to see if you're getting better character control, if you're getting better at timing your buffs and setting up your burst, right? When you're trying to combine your strongest damaging skills together to make sure that they amplify each other's effects. For some classes, that's very, very important to do. For other classes, it's actually better to kind of like stagger your skills, right? Do like one that lasts 30 seconds, another one that lasts 30 seconds, so your damage across the board is just stronger, so you can have a more gradual damage, which is typically referred to as DPM, right? You're going more for good average damage per minute. Whereas if you have to like squeeze everything together to optimize all of your bursts together, usually that's referred to more as burst or as DPS, damage per second.
Yeah.
So that's one thing for Dojo. The other thing is that depending on how high you rank, so you can do I think 2 or 3 runs a day. You don't really get many points for doing it. It's just like a what do you call it? What's like it's just like a little token that you get, but it doesn't really mean all that much. Like a formality, basically. But at the end of the week, they do the rankings per class and kind of like within your level range. So if you are in the top 70% of all of the people that participated that week, you will get Dojo points. And based on how far you get, the amount of points will vary. And then those points you can use in the shop. So there's a few items in the shop that are very good. There's a 3-day, no, is it 3-day? Yeah, 3-day spirit pendant you can buy, which is a pendant you can equip that gives you more experience. So that's a pretty valuable way of getting that. And then the other thing you can do, there's also experience coupons if you're short on those that you can buy in the Dojo shop with those points. And then you can also get honor experience later to help you. I mean, you can get it early on, but typically that's not a resource you need that much of early on if you want to min-max your inner ability, right? On the bottom right. And then sometimes also people get training dummies, so they can test, with outside of a dojo environment, just on a static dummy, they can test their battle. They do a battle analysis where they can test their skills and how well they can use them, and they can try different strategies to optimize their damage output, and also to gauge if they're strong enough for certain bosses where people will ask for a battle analysis number, and based on what type of class you are, whether you're DPM or DPS, that number will kind of tell people if you're ready for a certain boss content, at least damage-wise, but you'll still have to work on the mechanics and your character control, of course, but at least you know that one of the metrics is already there.
And then, piggyback off what you said about the Oz ring and stuff, I know Golix, the Superior Pendant, all that stuff, it's good. but
Understatement.
I
It's
don't.
great. It's amazing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. But I don't know how to get them without a carry. How do you do this?
You need quite a lot of damage. Again, it's a combination of like knowing your character well and knowing the boss well. And part of knowing the boss is knowing how big of a load of crap it is. The boss mechanics are really, really bad when they changed it. So for a lot of it, you basically kind of have to overpower them. I would say that, you know, soloing Hellux is probably around at the same point as when you're soloing Lotus and Damien, or where you can, like, you know, basically do it. That's around that point. You can do Hardlux before that. You can also do Hellux in party with other people. The coins, that are very valuable, those are instant, so everyone gets their own coins. So you don't slow down your progress if you do party Hellux. The drops are shared, so you'd have to come up with some kind of loot rotation or loot priority. But it still would be better than doing Hardlux, because, you know, Hardlux can't even drop the superior stuff.
Yeah.
Because so two of them drop, right? So the belt and the earring can drop, and then the other two pieces you'd have to buy, the pendant and the ring, you'd have to buy with coins from the shop. Yeah.
Okay. And then
those are like the gatekeep. Those two are like the getting on those pieces. That's basically the gatekeeper to moving into Lucid and Will. Or if not that, you know, some classes have good IED, have good boss damage already. They don't necessarily need those pieces. But if you want to move, if you can get to Lucid and Will, if you want to get to hard Lucid and Will, you're definitely going to need them, because they're just such great pieces, and the set bonus is pivotal to your progress for sure.
Are the coins needed only drop for Hellux?
Yeah.
Or does other mode? Oh, okay. So you have to do Hellux.
Yeah, so Hardlux drops them as well, but significantly fewer than Hellux. So the easy and the normal drop the pennies, and then hard and hell drop the coins.
Oh. Okay.
And they can only drop the quality of the equips of their difficulty or lower. So like the easy is kind of, you know, easy has cracked, normal has the solid, hard has the reinforced, and then hell has the superior. So they can drop their difficulty and lower.
So like, I know they all have like their own set bonuses, like reinforced solid and all that.
Yeah, you could basically skip all of them until hell. All of them. The other ones you can kind of tune out. You can use the pieces, like if they drop with epic potential or something, right? Because of transfer hammering, you can use that to transfer the quality over, and you can save yourself an E-pot, or you can save yourself cubes that you might have to use to tier up your item down the line. So there is value in them that way, but only to, you know, to push it further and to transfer it up, never really to wear it itself. You know, unless maybe you only have 2 or 3 rings and you're getting like a cracked or a solid ring, you can still use that. It's still an accessory. You can still tier it up for some free stats, get it to epic, get like 6% stat, maybe get some Star Force, but don't really push it too far, because it's going to get replaced at some point by like an event ring or something like that.
Well, and then talking about event rings, are they really important? Because I know,
yeah, for like early and mid game, they're basically you basically want to see them as like a 17-star ring without having to pay for the Star Force. That's kind of how you want to see them, because you only have to just work on the potential. You get to work on the potential right away, and you basically get all the Star Force for free. Now, they're that good because they're limited to that power, and they can't go beyond 17. So that's why they're very strong early on, but then they kind of lose their scaling later on. But because of the utility of drop rate and mezzo, you can always just re-roll the potential later when you're already invested into legendary, re-roll it to drop and mezzo, and they can still have very high value for your account in sense of drop gear later.
Okay. So I will want to try to get as many event rings for now.
Pretty much. Don't spread yourself too thin on like getting every single ring that you can, right? Because the further you go, again, the less you want to rely on the damage from every individual piece. You want to rely on your weapon, your secondary, and your emblem, your boost nodes, and your arcane power, and then your legion helping you out, right? If you have like a very early game ring, like the Silver Blossom ring that drops from Horntail, you've probably seen that one. And that one you end up getting to legendary, and it gets like a line of mezzo or drop. Don't be like, oh, this event ring is technically better, so I'm gonna just get another ring and get another one to legendary. Once you get so strong, whether you're equipping a silver blossom ring or an event ring, you're still gonna destroy every single monster you're killing. And at that point, spending the extra money and kind of throwing away that investment of the other ring is gonna be a waste because we don't have trade, right? You look at a piece, like, okay, when you're equipping a piece and you're upgrading a piece, it's always like, okay, how much can I possibly get out of this, right? Weapon, secondary, and emblem are more important because you can get more out of it. How long am I going to keep this piece? Emblem you're going to keep forever. Secondary, Princess Knows Metal, you're going to keep forever if you stay two-handed, right? The weapon, you're not going to keep forever. That's why this one is still epic, because you might go into Absolab, transfer hammer this one into Absolab, and then the Absolab you're going to keep a longer time, so you go harder on that one, right? That's why the priority, someone else probably told you, right? That's where that comes from. That's where that's based on. And then if you know what I just told you, like where the damage comes from and how much you need to push those pieces, a ring like that, you can be like, okay, well, right now, I roll like 1 line of strength and 1 line of meso obtained. That's great for now. And then it just becomes a drop rate later, and it'll keep the value then as well. Maybe another piece you keep up to epic, you get some Star Force, it's going to be okay for now, and then you transfer hammer it over, and then that value and that tier is going to be maintained. It only just loses 1 star because of the transfer hammer, and then maybe you push that one hard. And depending on what the path of upgrading for a piece is and how far you want to take your character, that will determine how much damage does it need. They'll determine what is generally the priority of the pieces and how far do you push them.
Okay.
It seems a little bit ethereal now, right? Because there's just so many options that you don't know about. But as you get more experience with this character, you can be like, oh, I can actually kill all of this content with my equip being around this level of being upgraded. That'll give you a point to start from your next character. And then really the next character, you can be like, okay, this one is upgraded about the same, but I can do some of the same things that the hero can, but some of the other things I definitely can't. Maybe that character just takes a little bit longer to fund. Maybe that character just needs more damage to do the same content. But then at least you have a benchmark and you won't go way over, right?
Yeah.
So everything you do now is you can learn from, even if it's not perfect.
And then you mentioned like this event ring being a 17 star.
Yeah, the equivalent roughly. Yeah.
I don't know what the effects of 17 stars. Again, I just been star forcing.
Mm-hmm.
So Star Force, because
sure, yeah, because you can, and it's there. Yeah. So up to 10.
But then I realized it's expensive.
Yeah, up to 10, it's pretty brain dead, pretty cheap. It doesn't really, it doesn't really hurt much. Past 10, it starts getting considerably more expensive. Typically, you keep things around, like 12 is kind of like a sweet spot, but like 10, 11, or 12, wherever you want to be at that, that's typically a good spot to have it sitting as you work more on the potentials of other stuff first. You can, for example, have like a legendary, weapon, secondary, and emblem, work on your boost nodes, work on your arcane symbols, and have everything like around 12 stars or something, and then work on your accessories, trying to get your 9 accessories, trying to get into legendary to try to get the combination of 5 meso lines and 4 drop lines, right? So you can maximize getting a bag of meso from every monster you kill, and with 100% meso obtained, make sure that you hit the cap of how much money can be in the bag. Once you have that whole thing set up, that's when the money starts flowing in, and that's when you can start looking for an upgrade event, typically. Either a 30% off Starforce event or a 1+1 Starforce event, which will make you go from up to, like, you get 2 stars for every success up to 10, succeeding up to 12. So that if you ever drop back down to 10, you can immediately jump back to 12 and save money that way, and use that event to get up to 15. Typically, you don't want to do that too quickly, because past 12, you have a chance to blow your item up, so you'll need time to get backups. So in that time, we work on the accessories instead to get the income increased, right? With the utility from the accessories, so that when the time does come when we have the money and there's an event, we also have the backups to fall back on, so we don't have to safeguard. Because safeguarding is a very valuable tool for items that you can either not get backups of, or they're very expensive. But if you can get backups in the same time, like for CRA, by doing CRA every week, you can get a lot of pieces, and that way you can get value out of the pieces by not having to safeguard, and that way, that's an extra way of funding your account. And then typically once you're at 15, you kind of pay a lot of money to get that, but you don't get that much out of it. 15 stars is not that much better than like 10 or 11. But what's really good is once you go past 15, because that's when you get weapon attack and magic attack with every star. And that's when it starts really, really adding up. But again, there's also a chance to boom there. So typically, if you want to go from 15 to 17, typically, you wait, you make your money back because you just spend everything getting to 15, right? And that's when you wait for a 5, 10, 15 event, because that gives you a 100% chance for success at 5, at 10, and at 15. So the 15 to 16 is completely risk-free. And then, depending on the equip, you can either risk the 16 to 17 or you can safeguard that last star. And then once you make that last jump from 15 to 17, that's a significant increase across all of your pieces. And that's also when most of your other pieces are going to start falling into place. You're going to go more into the damage set. And that's when you're going to take more and more equips that were maybe epic up to unique, and maybe even some other unique ones up to legendary as well. Because to push past 17, you can't safeguard anymore. And then it's full risk, so then you need full-on backups to be able to risk that. So typically you push a little bit harder on flames and a little bit harder on potential once most of your stuff reaches 17 stars. And then you start basically flushing out the drop set, the damage set. You start separating the two. So that's where you need the Hellux drops, right? And that's when you also need to do Commercy, which you've probably heard about, to get the sweet water accessories. And then those accessories, the sweet water and the superior accessories, are basically going to drown out all of the boss accessories that you had up until then, right? Zakum Eye, Zakum Face, maybe Silver Blossom Ring, if you have the Diacitus earrings, that kind of stuff, the Pink Bean Belt, those are going to get like flushed out, because those are great pieces to use up until then, because the set bonus is great. Most of them have flame advantage, so they can get good flames, which, maybe you want to ask a little bit about flames, because those could be a little bit complicated. And they're easy to get, and kind of cheap to Starforce. Plus, a lot of them the more expensive ones transfer hammer over, so you can maintain a lot of the value. That makes them a good investment early on, and you can get that return.
Yeah, I do want to talk about flames, but before I talk about flames, you said that like items can be destroyed, right?
Yeah.
So you have like backups for them, but how does that work? Does like you have to reset everything? Like you have to restart the item from 0, or?
Basically, everything gets saved. That's good. But the Star Force goes down to 12, and it turns into a trace. It turns into like a shadow of the item. So what you'll need is you need to get a backup, and then you can put the trace and transfer it into the new item, and it'll basically copy all of the items from the trace. So like if you were to try this Fafnir Battle Cleaver on screen, for example, you were able to try it from 12 to 13, and on the 0.6% or whatever percent chance it actually blows up, you will get a Fafnir Battle Cleaver trace. You'll have to get 15 more pieces from CVAL, right? Double click those, get a Battle Cleaver, and then you will basically in the transfer in the Starforce grid, if you drag the trace in there, it'll give you the little UI, and you can drag the new one in there. It'll keep the same potential tier, the same soul, the same bonus on the soul, the same flame, the same potential, all of that the same, and it'll be 12 stars, because 12 is the highest you can go without any chance to boom, basically. So also if you boom back. Yeah, including if you boom from 21 to 22, the same thing happens.
Oh,
yeah,
so even
all the way back down to 12.
There.
Yep, all the way back down to 12. Yeah,
that's just me. I need to start making more mesos.
Yeah, way more if you want to brute force their way. And also the items that some people go for are way harder to replace than Fafnir as well. So you can imagine the exponential, but the bonus stats per star go higher the higher the level of the item is. The potential can get better if your item is level 160 or higher. The base stats of the items are also way higher, which means that the flames get better. So, more risk, but also more reward. So, live dangerously.
Yeah, just curious. What is like a max look like on a web? Like the max everything?
Max everything? So 22 stars is like the ultimate max, basically. I think I go for 21 a lot because mathematically it's a way better sweet spot. It's way cheaper than 22. You get way more value out of your money. But 22 is kind of the sweet spot because past 22, the percentages just plummet. So past Is it past 14? It's 30% chance, or is it past 50%? It's 30% chance to succeed, all the way up until 22, and then from 22 to 23, it's 3% chance to succeed.
Is that where like most end game players cap at, like 23?
Most people don't even go, like some people will have like
or 22.
There's probably like, I don't know, there's probably less than 20 items on the entire reboot server that are 23 or higher.
Oh.
So 22 is where, yeah, well, endgame players will cap. 21, if you get most of your stuff to 21, you can do every content in the game. You'll just be a little bit weaker, but you'll get there way faster than someone who tries to rush 22s from an efficiency point.
I see.
Yeah, so 3% chance from 22 to 23, then 2% chance from 23 to 24, and 1% chance from 24 to 25. Plus, you don't even get stat anymore past 22, only weapon and magic attack. So for the efficiency of your money, it actually goes down quite a bit.
Oh, okay. And then, obviously, flame. I know what flame is, kind of. It's just the green things. But I don't know what's a good flame or how to even calculate a good flame.
I do have a video that goes into detail on all of that. If you check !flames, there's a video there that basically goes into just that. Like, if you see a flame on any item, how do you know if it's good? How do you know if you can settle for this? How do you know if you should be improving on it? For any so any weapon, any equip on any character ever. And it links back also to the progression grid. There it is again. Hey. Because we have flame scores here, right? For non-advantage items, the flame scores for advantage items, and weapon flames. Right now, that might not tell you very much what that even means. But if you get through the video, it'll become clear. There's also a link in the Flames command. There's also a link to a score calculator. So the flame score is the number that we use to kind of future-proof your flames, to make sure that you know that you will eventually move into a situation where this flame will either be good or bad, so you don't have to constantly change the flame. Because as you are undoubtedly now more aware than before the session, is that all of the sources of damage work together, right? And if you are very lacking in a certain source, but you get it on your flame, comparatively that flame can be really, really good, right? Let's say in the beginning, typically your potentials aren't very good, so if you get percentage stat on a flame, that'll represent a whole lot of damage, right? But if your potential is really, really good, and your flame instead has like 150 main stat and no percentage, that can still be really, really good because there's enough percentage to multiply that with. So it all comes down to the balance of your entire account. So what this early, mid, late end game also kind of does, and what these numbers all do, is they sketch out the scenario of how much funding you will roughly have in, if you follow like the normal progression through the game, and how the balance of all of your stats in your account will roughly be, and that translates to what kind of value we give to the numbers that will happen on your flames. So at that point, all you just need to do is basically just like blindly follow my guide. You can follow the calculator, put in the numbers that are relevant for your stat, and the only relevant fields will be open to put numbers in, and then you will get a flame score. And then basically all it just comes down to is just checking that number with what the grid says is a good goal. And if you're way lower than that, that means flaming that is going to give you a good bang for your buck. If you're on it, that means you can probably hold off and prioritize something else. And if you're above it, that might mean that you don't have to touch it for a long time.
Let's see.
For weapons, it's a bit more complicated because it has a separate part in the calculator for the weapons, because weapons go by a percentage of the base attack of the weapon, right? That's why I mentioned the flame getting better with the higher level equip. So I can't really give that number because every single weapon has like a different base weapon and magic attack, right? So the numbers would be all over the place. Claws, for example, have like, I think, a third of the base attack of most mage weapons, of like a Kanna fan or something. So if I put like, 60 is good, it'd be like, no. Like for one character, 60 will be horrible, and for another one, it will be amazing. So instead, you have to look at the tier of, the level group of your weapon, right? If it's a Fafnir, it's in this group. If it's this one, if it's Abzo, this one, if it's Arcane, and whatever the base attack is. So I know, for example, my Knuckle on my Arc is Arcane, so it's Flame Advantage. It's a level 200. Base attack is 221. So based on these numbers, I can know what tier the flame is. 7 being the absolute highest with only 1% chance on the Eternal Flames, which are the rarest. So the most realistic goal is the 6, because that's the highest tier you can also get with the red flames, with the powerful flames. So the 106, that's the number that I'm looking for when it comes to attack. That's how you can see what these is. And then the plus basically determines any of these other stats. So percentage boss damage, or percentage all stat. Anything that also includes damage, basically.
Okay. So, yeah, so what you showed earlier, like for the tier thing, that's like the plus whatever number.
So that'll be the tier
tier
part, and then the plus just means that you get any of those other stats. So if you hover over here, it'll explain. So the class with low weapon base attack, like Night Lord, want a tier 6 plus over a tier 7. Basically what that means is if you go from tier 6 to tier 7, you might gain 30 weapon attack, but the lower your base is, the lower that difference is, right? If my weapon was only 100, a tier 7 would be way more rare, but it would only represent 14 damage. A 14 weapon attack. That's not great, right? But if you have 500, some weapons have this. Going from a tier 6 to a tier 7 would represent 68 attack. That might be actually more beneficial for you to get. So depending on the type of weapon, because we're talking at the upper end now, right? You're trying to min-max. Yeah. This is the point where you have like a specified calculator that you throw all of the numbers in so that it can tell you whether 13 hyperstat in boss damage and 14 in damage is better for you than 11 in damage and 15 in IED, right? Because you can't do those maths anymore in your head. There's too many moving parts at that point, right? So you just let a calculator do it for you. At that point, you know, there might be some discrepancies, but generally if you have, you know, very early on you have a tier 5 attack, that's good. Once you go into the mid game, you want to get a tier 6, that's fine. And then if you get anything that gives you any damage on top of a tier 6, you're golden basically. And the further you go, the more getting the bonus on top of the tier 6 becomes a necessity rather than a luxury basically.
I see. Okay, and then just a small, I guess, last question now would be like, I do see people re-equip gloves and stuff when they buff up. I don't know why. Why do they? Like, I see some videos and I see people.
It's probably non-reboot mostly.
Okay,
they'll have specifically because of the potential. So some of the decent skills that you get in your V Matrix, those skills can also be gotten as legendary lines or sometimes as unique lines on equips. So for example, decent hyperbody can be gotten, I think, on unique and legendary. I think it's pants and overalls. And like you can get decent haste and decent combat ardors on shoes as potential. You can get decent sharp eyes and decent speed infusion on gloves. And what people will do is to min-max so they can get the buff, but don't have to lose the line of potential. They'll have like a separate glove just to boost the skill, then switch to their full damage equip, and then have the buff on, and have the extra V Matrix slot for a skill node that they can have access to, right? And then trying to min-max it that way. In Reboot, you generally don't do this. It's just... It's too min-maxy, switching gear, you have like high ping. When you're in combat, you can't switch your equips back. If it's a very short run and you know you can 100% kill the boss within the buff, you can do that, but this is very, very... it's like old stuff, and it's mostly non-reboot stuff. We tend to not do that.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Okay, well, I mean, that answers all the questions I had.
Yeah, we went to the entire list?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we went through... Did we go through all of the things in the progression rate, I guess? Level, main stat, you know what that means. Critical rate.
Yeah.
I guess we didn't really go into IED and how it's specifically calculated. For IED, I have a command as well. Basically, one video where I explain the whole thing, and then a list where you can do the calculation. It's pretty simple. You just have to do it correctly, but once you do it correctly, you can, again... that number that comes out of the calculation, you can compare to the number in the grid and see if you're on the right track. And then there's a list of the sources that you can use as help to make sure that you have everything for the calculator. The main thing here is that I have this set to functional IED. So another thing, we don't look at the stat window for the range, and we actually also don't really look at the stat window for the IED, because that is the IED that the game will give you regardless of what skill you use and regardless of what you hit. And in that description that I just gave you, you can probably already imagine some skills will get buffed with IED more than others, and some bosses will get debuffed and have their armor reduced, which will make you, when you hit them, apply more effective IED, more functional IED on the hit. But the game doesn't know that before you hit something, right? So that's applied on hit and not sent with that number before you hit it on your stat window. So it's important, again, depending on which class you are, to know if there's a big difference between your visual IED, what you see in your stat window, and your functional, which is what happens when you apply the damage to the boss. Yeah, so this number goes by the functional, because if I went through the visual, again, every single class would be in a completely different ballpark, right? Yeah. And the further you go apart, the bigger the difference it would be, because it's multiplicative. It's not like when you have 50% and you add a line of 30%, you don't go from 50 to 80, right? The line that you add adds that percentage of how much you're still missing. So if you add 30% on someone who's at 50, you add 30% of the missing 50, which is 15. So you go from 50 to 65. That's how that works. So the further you go, you get diminishing returns. But the armor of the bosses also goes up. So the effectiveness, the relative effectiveness of the IED also goes up, because your damage penalty gets lower. I go into a math example as well in the IED video, so that should explain everything. But what it eventually comes down to is that the late game bosses and the end game bosses all have 300% armor, which means that, let's say that you have 85%, right, from the early stages of the mid game. You ignore 85% of the armor of the 300%, which means that there's 45% left, which means you get 45% final damage penalty. So you only deal just over half of your damage, only 55%. That's a pretty heavy price to pay when you spend all of this effort funding your account, right?
Wait, like 45% meaning like from the whole?
From
like
the whole,
total?
yeah, final damage penalty. Yes, so all of that, even including like your arcane power bonus if you have that, even including your boost nodes. At the end, how much damage is going to go through? Boom, slash it 45% off, right? But if someone else is with you in a party and they have 95%, they ignore 95% of the 300% armor, which means there's 15% left. They deal 85% of their damage versus your 55%. So just from going from 85 to 95 in that one stat, which seems like it's just 10% more, instead of doing 55% of their final damage, they do 85%, which is more than 50% extra compared to you. That's why IED super duper important later on in the game. And that's why Hero kind of cheats, because you have a forced job skill that gives you 50% for free, which is why your base amount is that high. If you look at your stat window, you haven't really worked at IED whatsoever, but you're already at 77% because of your your forced job skill.
Oh, I see. Combat Master 50. Okay. And then what does that like 15% get? Like say like that 15% minus or reduction for that player, does that get counteracted by boss damage? Like does boss damage have anything?
That's a different part of the multiplication, but the boss damage multiplication happens before the final damage multiplication of the IED. But it's all part of the same. I mean, I could like draw you out the entire damage multiplication and see how it works, but like one chunk is your stat. So that's like, okay, a multipliable stat plus all of the percentage stat you have plus all the non-multipliable stat. That's like one bunch. That gets multiplied by attack, which is multipliable attack plus your percentage attack plus your non-multipliable attack. That gets multiplied together into one bunch. Then there's the damage part that looks at percentage damage and percentage damage to normal monsters if you're attacking normal monsters, or percentage boss damage if you're attacking boss damage. That gets thrown into one pile. That's another multiplier. Then there's critical damage. That's a separate multiplier that looks at, do you hit a crit? If you hit a crit, all of the critical damage goes through, plus the base critical damage. If you hover over that, you can see there's the base critical damage is, I believe, 30 to 50% or 20 to 50%. or 20 to 50%, right? So if you have 5 there, so if you hit a crit, you do anywhere from 25% to 55% critical damage, which is basically final damage, but it works additively. So it's different. It doesn't multiply everything already. It works additive with that percentage. But it's also a type of critical damage. That's why we talked about it at a higher level of importance than the percentage damage and the boss damage, remember? Because it doesn't have the same diminishing returns. It does have some diminishing returns, but not as much. And then there's the part of the separate multipliers of your skills, right? Looking at your boost node. There's a multiplier looking at your IED based on the PDR and the ID that you have. And then there's a multiplier looking at the arcane power, or later once you get to level 260 plus, when you get to sacred power, which is like a different energy that you need to deal damage to the monsters and the bosses in that area. And those are all like different chunks that all get, they all get multiplied. They all get and then there's the level difference penalty, right? So there's a bunch of those things going on at once. And that's why this balance exists, because you want to make sure that for none of these, you're like completely out of whack. Because suddenly, this will happen to people, and people will probably tell you stories. You can be attacking a certain boss and thinking that you're completely ready, and you hit the boss and you just hit a 1. You're like, oh fuck, what happened? Did I not get enough IED? Did I accidentally unequip a symbol? Did I not put on my boost node? Not a boost node would not make you hit 1s, but it would make you hit lower numbers than you're used to. Yeah. Or am I way too low level for this boss, right? Too big of a level penalty. Or what's even more fun, is it a combination of all of these things together that somehow add up to 100% final damage reduction, which makes you hit 1s? That's why it's always good to look back at this grid and see, like, am I way off base on anything? If I am, it's probably more efficient to spend some more time at that. But ideally, you gradually bring all of these things up roughly together. And if there's a Starforcing event, you'll be a little bit higher on Starforcing for a bit. If there's a cubing event, you might be a little bit higher on main stat for a bit. But then the next event will be the other one, and you'll compensate again, and you'll bring back the balance.
Is there like a guide where you have this progression thing along with the bosses?
This basically internally consistent. So you see early, mid, late, and end, and then you have the exclamation mark dailies. That's split up in the same way into early, mid, late, and end with the same level grids, making your level the indicator of what you can do. So this is already internally consistent with each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and this is this is like the exclamation mark range video, where it's like, what can you do, like what content can you do based on how strong you are. I plan to update that video because that was with, we have added new dailies. I have changed the game stages around for different levels because the level cap went up, right? So I had to move things around a little bit, so that has to be updated. But yeah, between the links and the Legion, so you have the general progress there. Between the Flame video, so that can, explain the details a little bit more to you, explaining how IED works exactly, depending on, how nerdy you want to get with all the mathematical explanation there. And the combination of the progression and the dailies, that pretty much already encompasses everything, but there might be too much information for you to grab, so just stay as focused in the beginning as you need to be. And as you get more knowledgeable about the game, as you have more experience yourself, you'll be able to pick and choose more and be like, okay, I know this grid says that, and I kind of explain why it says it, but I don't want to do it, and you can just do whatever you want, right? It's just a general guide for just to point you in the right direction for people who have absolutely no idea what to do.
Well, that sums up everything I wanted to know.
I think it was a very good session. We didn't specifically look at your hero and say, like, work on this here, work on this there, work on this there.
Yeah.
But I think you've absorbed a lot of knowledge now. You might have to rewatch the session, take some notes. But I think you'll be able to identify pretty quickly where have you already invested, where would it be very cheap to reroll now and get very good investment, and which pieces are okay to stay now where they are and kind of just feel it, get a little bit more experience with the character, maybe move a few things around in the matrix, practice the bosses a bit more, and which bosses can you actually already do.
Yeah, because like for this session, I just really wanted to know how, like, where's all this damage, like basically what we talked about in this video.
Yeah, where is all the damage coming from, and how is it possible that someone who looks super weak is actually out damaging the fuck out of me? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was like the biggest question that I had, and then the other stuff was like, you know, like small things like equipment. But I think with the equipment, I generally understand what I need to do, because I do have other, like, I have friends that I could ask, you know, if I ever get lost, or, you know, your videos, your guys that goes back
to. The other progression session where we do go more into that.
Yeah, so I think
usually that's the last thing I do. I go through all the systems, make sure that everyone exists, all the gets all the systems right, and then when that happens, prioritizing the equips, usually for a lot of people are like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, this makes total sense, like, because this is going to get switched out, so I don't go too hard here. I have the money, so this event will be next here, so this is next. And usually that starts falling into place way more, because if you go into equips immediately and then you explain why the priority, then afterwards you're like, oh, okay. But but if you explain the stuff first, hopefully you can piece it together. Plus, now you can translate this to the Buccaneer when you play it, or, you know, God forbid you're well, I don't know, not God forbid, but you're working on Legion skill or Legion character, and suddenly you're like, oh, this character is really fun actually. I want to play this one for a bit. You'll immediately be able to translate this information to the other one. There might be some specific things that are different, but you're aiming for the same goal. So you're like, okay, I'm aiming for crit. Oh, this character already has all the crit. Okay, skip it, go to the next one, right? As long as you're familiar with the priority, where the sources are, and roughly how they're balanced, you'll be able to adapt it to any character that you end up playing for down the line.
Yeah, because I think... Oh, I forgot what I was supposed to say.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. When I was playing this game, I will only look at my equipments.
Yeah,
because I think that's how I used to play.
It used to be super important. That used to be number one. Yeah, for sure. The scrolls and having the right pieces, the set bonuses, 100%. And now they're like the final layer. It's important, but there's so much other stuff going on that they're actually a very small percentage, right? It's a really big paradigm shift in priority, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, this just opened my eyes to like what I need to do, why my damage isn't there when I think it should be there. So yeah, and then I do have a question. I guess it's about the Choo Choo event. I just
the upcoming one after this.
Yeah, the upcoming one in February. I want to be able. I want to get my links done. I want to set them up for the event. That use the pots from the event to, like, you know, level them up, or if there is a 210 link skill that like, it's very important, like, a good thing to have. I kind of wanna.
You're going a little bit robot-y, by the way, in the Discord.
Yeah. Sorry. Wait,
Wait, can you rejoin real quick the call?
Yeah.
Maybe that fixes it. Switching it off and on again. Hello?
Hello, is it good?
Yeah, that's perfect. Totally fixed now.
Okay. Yeah, so like the event was like, I want to use this event for my link skills, my Legion. But then I know there's a lot of pots in there to like get to 210 or 200, and I want to know like which ones are the more important ones that I should focus on trying to get to 210 for my link or my Legion.
Yeah, so remember what I said for like building the Legion, for, like, from an efficiency standpoint, like all 70, all 120, all 140, and then up to 200 and all 210. You basically follow that same order. You just start back from the top of the list every time and just work your way down again. So whatever is like the highest priority level 1 link, you can basically work your way down, and then once you get to the, you know, once you get to like the red area, basically, once you get to those, so I don't know, that's like 40 characters in, then you basically just start back from the top and work on the level 2s. So the exceptions would be if you get a Terror Burn, then you want to push straight into the level 3, right? You want to push straight into level 210, because not only are you getting 200, you know, at 3x speed, or a little bit more, you're also getting those extra benefits to make sure that you can make the jump from 200 to 210 really easily. I would say like the more important ones. So for 0, it's the link here. So for this one, it kind of caps out at 200, right? Because you have the levels here. So you have 60, 100, 140, 200, 250 for these, for the Legion ranks, for the green parts. And then for the link skills, it's 70, 120, 210. So you want to look at the white squares basically on the priorities for the level 3 links. So it'll be Mercedes, Evan. Aaron is good, but Aaron is also fine to keep level 2 for longer. Not necessarily top priority. Phantom, crit rate, very good. Beast Tamer, varying levels of necessity, but very solid level 3 link. This one only goes up to 2, right? Because it's only 2 numbers. And then the next level 3 is basically all the way down here is Arc, Demon Avenger, and those characters. And so this is not only categorized in that order for importance, but that's also somewhat categorized in the order of usually what people don't like those classes and they would want to burn them anyway to get them that far. And you could even consider, depending on how far you are when these Terror Burns pop up, is that you just leave your 140, and because for Terror Burn you have to make a new character, right? And that you just remake an Evan, even if you already have like a level 125 or something, and then the other Evan is just there for Legion levels until that gets surpassed or until you need character slots, and then you can delete it later or once you go over 40 characters. But until then, you know, it still counts for Legion levels, so no need to delete it or something. You just make a new one, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then there is, say I'm looking at it, Kanna. I do have a level 160 Kanna.
Mm-hmm.
Should I just keep it at 160 for that, you know, I have a F140 already for the Legion and level 2 Link Skill?
Mm-hmm.
Or
it's
should I
solid,
try to push it? Or like, is it worth?
Well, what would you want to do with it? So if you're just trying to push it, right? What is the next step? Is going from 3% to 5% boss damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would need to do 40 levels for 2% boss damage. That's the value. And if you want to do stuff with the character, maybe to like maybe cap more easily on dailies if you need to get a currency from an event, for example. Kanna can do that very easily because of access to Kishin, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you need to do like the dailies in Scrapyard and Dark World Tree, if you're trying to get the items for the weeklies to be able to afford your Absolab gear a little bit faster, because those pieces can be transferred, so you can get to the point where you can buy Absolab faster. For that, typically Kanna can have good value for your account. But compared to those 40 levels for that 2% boss damage, you could also, if you don't have a Demon Avenger yet, in those 40 levels, you can probably make a level 120 Demon Avenger, which will give you 10% damage link skill and also 3% boss damage. So you also want to look at the comparative advantage of like where do you spend your time, right? And in the beginning, when it comes to Legion and Links, it's just shit out more characters. Just flood your board, make all the classes, and just go down the list and make all the characters. And then once they all get to the same point, you just reassess, you go back from the top and you just work your way down. Again, that's the efficiency way. If you find characters that you enjoy, or you just, you end up a character that you absolutely hate, if you absolutely hate it, put it down to the side, and that just becomes a Mega Burn or a Terror Burn later. Don't worry about it. If you absolutely love it, just play it a little bit more. Like, who cares if it's not number 1 on the list? It's up to you, right? You want to have some fun, you play a character that's more fun for you. But if you know absolutely not what to do, you can always go back to this list and you won't be lost.
Okay.
Sound good?
All right. Yep. Sounds good.
All right, great. Yeah, this is almost like a where does my damage come from video, I guess, because we kind of went through the whole progression grid.
Yeah, because that was the most thing that was complex. Like, just even though I asked my friends, they won't give me a straight answer. They'll be like, I just play the game.
Yeah, and some of it kind of just, as long as you keep playing and you're not doing some really weird shit, it kind of sorts itself out. But to really get it broken down, well, kind of like, give myself a big pat on the back there, but like to really have it broken down like this, I think most people would have to really think to make sure that they cover all of their bases and that, they can really explain where everything is coming from. It's not super intuitive or something. But, through playing the game, you do pass by all of these check marks. But to be able to explain to someone who's completely new exactly how it works, I mean, I would hope that I would be better at it than just random Joe Schmo, because this is my job, right? So I would hope that I would be able to do this and that I would be able to be, worth the investment of a session. So hopefully that's all way more clear now.
Yeah, it is, because now I know what I need to focus on. instead of just doing some random useless thing and
Yeah.
wondering why I'm so weak.
Exactly. That's the other thing as well, is that you want to make sure that you can take that time to do stuff that's just fun, as long as you know that you're on the right track and that not everything you do is you either fucking up monumentously. I don't know what's the word there. Monumentally, right? As long as you're going in the right direction. Having to worry about every single decision you make of like, is this fucking up my account forever, is a horrible, is not a way to live, right? So as long as you know roughly which way you're going, you can make sure that no major cock-ups are happening and you're not veering completely off course. Monumentally, that's the word. Thank you. ESLing a little bit right now.
All right. Well, thank you for the session.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And if your friends, if you ever ask your friends and they don't know, you can you could send them the link, and then they'll be able to to see the details. Maybe you can help your friends with some stuff every now and then, because you will know now. Yeah, now you'll be the knowledge bank, okay?
Hopefully, that's where I want to kind of get my new friends into this game.
Yeah. Okay.
And try to be like their teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But first I gotta learn a lot more about this game first before I can even say anything.
They'd be like, "Yo, why do you do this?" And like,
I don't know.
But that's my main thing.
Play the game.
I do my best to hopefully explain why I give the advice that I do and how the things work. Because, like, say that there is a patch and some system changes, now you'll be more able to say like let's say the ability to get flames completely changes or like doubles or something. You'll be able to say like, oh, the standard for flames is probably going to go up comparative to now because the sources go up and it's easier to get them, right? So now you'll already see like, okay, so the flame scores, they can probably be a little bit higher in these same stages, so those will probably be get adjusted upwards, right? That's another way that you'll have more insight now in how things are going to affect the game if you see a KMS change, for example.
Oh, and then I did have a small questions like
last question. Go.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we're a little over there.
Bring up KMS, like how does like stuff from KMS work when stuff happens in KMS? Does GMS get it like months on later?
Yeah, so they have a test server to Tespia, so whenever it's KMS-T, that means it's still in the test server and it's still completely subject to change. So it's interesting to look at, but you don't really plan along with that yet. When it goes into KMS, into the live servers, then there's like a very, 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 very good chance that we get it. How long until we get it kind of depends on the type of content. Typically, if it's seasonal content, we just get it on the next season. So like the current winter update for KMS is pretty much what we're expected to get next summer. And it just, they can't develop it exactly at the same time, so they just give us as soon as possible, but they still want to give it during the summer and the winter, because that's when most people, like yourself, have time to play, right? So they can cash in on those people. Things that are yearly, like the anniversary event, Christmas event, New Year's event, stuff like that, we just get the one from last year, because that's the earliest convenience that we can get them. And things that are like in between, we were at a release pattern of about 4.5 months behind, but for some things they tried to catch up and we were only 3 months behind, but then that got almost reverted, and then for some stuff we were like almost 9 months behind again. So sometimes they cluster updates because it's easier to just roll them out all at the same time, and sometimes that means delays for us. But in general, I would say like 95% of the stuff that happens in KMS we will get, unless it's very, very specific to KMS. Like they had some stuff with like login through PC centers and stuff, which is very popular in Korea. That doesn't happen at all over here in the West, so they didn't copy that kind of stuff over for us, of course. Like that would be completely unreasonable. But most of the other stuff just copy pastes comes over, which means that sometimes it's very obvious how that's going to affect us, and sometimes it's kind of like, ooh, I wonder how that's going to interact, right? Because we have more attack speed, for example. We have different types of sources of damage that KMS doesn't have. We have extra classes that they don't have. So some things that will make sense in Korea to change for them will end up having a downstream negative effect for us, or an even stronger, way more positive, which is, in my opinion, also kind of negative because it disrupts the balance of the game quite a bit. Downstream effect for us, and then it can, shift the balance between the classes quite a bit sometimes.
Okay.
But yeah,
All
we
right.
look through the KMS content, and I upload that to YouTube, and we have Orange Mushroom website. He makes like the translations of all the patch notes. So yeah, you asked about the Choo-Choo event. I don't know the exact details, to be honest. Like I probably went over it in Korea, but so that's probably over 4 months ago, so I don't remember the details. But you can probably find an Orange Mushroom. This is the you can find the link.
Watched a
and then,
video,
Mhm.
like Aaron, whatever that guy.
Oh yeah, Steve.
Like
He goes over that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just watching all those and just trying to plan out how I should work with my links with that.
Yeah, whenever the patch notes comes out, I guess that's the last thing that's probably good to mention. I have the event calendar. So I put all of the events that are in the patch notes. I put all of those on the calendar. I think we just passed 1 week. Yeah, so hide this row. Boop. And you can basically just see all the events that are ongoing, how long they're going to last. And then you can also just click on any event, boom, and it'll take you to the patch notes that are active. And you can just read immediately like what kind of stuff is in there. And then you can use that to kind of gauge, okay, what kind of stuff do I feel like doing? What kind of stuff is not worth doing at all for me? And maybe if I want the stuff, how much do I need to do for it? Like how much time is it going to cost? Because you want to time manage it a little bit, right? You're not just going to add an hour and a half a day. You have a limited time in your day. So if there is something that gets great value out of an event, like maybe the easy level up potions, maybe you push like 1 or 2 dailies that you're doing now kind of into the maybe pile and into the maybe later and maybe not at all pile. And you just reprioritize a little bit for the current event. And then when the event is over, you just take them back into your daily routine. So hopefully this kind of gives you an ability to make up your schedule as well on a weekly and a monthly basis. Because once you get further into the game, right, like I mentioned, the sunny Sundays on like when you do their upgrading for the Starforcing and stuff, these are also like announced in batches like that. So I try to highlight which days I think the sunny Sundays are very worth, and which days it's just kind of like, well, there is a bonus, but it's like more experience from Inferno Wolf portals, whoop-de-doo, like maybe a low-level character can get a little bit more experience, but it's not a hugely impactful thing to plan around,
Yeah.
So yeah, all of these things together, hopefully. I don't know if there's any field you in like progressing in this game or needing information that I'm like completely forgetting. 'Cause sometimes it's good to get the perspective of someone who's pretty new as well.
I mean, I can't think of anything.
Right, I'll take that as a glaring recommendation of my content then. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for this.
Yes, you're very welcome. Best of luck on everything, and I'll upload it on YouTube so you can watch it back if you need to. And just use the commands whenever you need. Ask in the chat whenever you need. If there's anything specific to the progression session that you wanted to ask and you need like a little bit more of a long form answer, you can always reach out on Discord. But otherwise, you can always be in the chat. I stream every day, so plenty of people there who can help you out.
Got it. All right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a great day, and I'll see you around.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right. Just a long enough session. Hopefully you guys had a good totem. Totem is now over. I know I'm dumping 6 hours of content onto YouTube today, but now you got some stuff to watch for the next few days, okay, guys? I'm just going to hang out. If you want one of these amazing sessions catered to your very highly specific personal situation as well, make sure you check the description of the YouTube video, and you can contact and reach out, and you can request one of these as well. If you want a chance to win one of these completely for free, make sure you leave a comment that says that you would like to win, and I draw 2 winners at the end of the month, and those lucky people will get contacted through the YouTube comments and can reach out to me on Discord afterwards and get a free session with me. So that's another bit of value for you. If you need any of these resources, ! And then whatever you need information for, use it in my Twitch chat. You can already see a bunch of people doing it, and you'll just get the links, you'll get the information, you click through, you can bookmark it, it'll always just stay in the same place until I move everything to my website, which is, probably 2 years from now, who knows. Procrastination alert. But the information will always be updated in those commands as fast as I can. It's not like a link to a YouTube video that gets completely outdated a little bit, but the YouTube videos guess what they link to? Back to the commands. So even if the video specifically gets a little bit outdated, it'll link back to a command that doesn't get outdated, that stays up to date. So make sure you use those. What else? Hopefully this video was entertaining. Hopefully it taught you a little bit or a lot of it. If it did, I'm glad. That's the goal. I try to keep a match of, you know, keeping the game fun. It's a game, right? Hopefully it can be fun. Plus, hopefully you can also move forward and get a little bit stronger and impress yourself with what the progress you've made, and maybe impress someone else as well with the progress that you were able to make, and just, you know, crush their soul with the gains and out damage them with pencilier gear, even though they already have absolute lab gear on. Okay, that was a callback. We call it a callback. Yeah. Other than that, I guess thank you for watching. Thank you for checking that out. Check out the playlist to see other progression sessions if you're interested. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye, YouTube.